What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel, talking Sunday's 9-game MLB slate, joined as usual by Mangone here on Sunday morning. Travis, how you doing on this Sunday morning?
Yeah, I'm definitely tired. It was a longer night, didn't get as much sleep, but that's okay. We're here grinding, and we got League of Legends is starting right now, DC. So if you're down for a sweat, who knows? I might be even more distracted watching that. And hey, we got baseball. We were talking about it right before the show. I think it's a good slate. I know it's still early. We're getting lineups. Another thing about Sundays is who knows what lineups you're going to get or what values are going to pop up. So that's another factor that we're not even ready for. Jake knows too. It's race day, so we got some NASCAR. Jake, I heard it's going to rain all day, so I don't know how much NASCAR is going to happen, but we'll have to see. And should be a fun one. I'm excited to talk about this baseball slate, though.
Absolutely, yeah. 9 games to talk about. We'll do it game by game as we always do on the show. I do think, just kind of digging into it this morning, to use your favorite term, Mangone, it looks like kind of an elite pitching slate to me, which oftentimes means that the hitting options, or the good hitting options anyway, are somewhat limited. That's kind of my initial take on the slate, struggling a little bit to find places that I'm excited to attack. And, that's despite some really good hitting weather for the most part. It's just a lot of pretty good pitchers going at it, some good bullpens in play, all that stuff. So we'll try to get to the bottom of it. And with that, let's begin. Atlanta Braves, New York Yankees, this one in Yankee Stadium. Absolutely perfect hitting conditions, 95 degrees, winds out to left center field. It's humid. It's going to be very, very warm in New York. Ball should be flying. We've got two lefties on the hill. Max Fried pitching for the Braves. He's had yet another excellent season, really going deep into games, 100-plus pitches almost every time out. Nestor Cortez going for the Yankees. A good pitcher in his own right, in my opinion, not quite on Fried's level, but still certainly a quality arm pitching for the Yankees here. And I think we start out with a really interesting game that I don't love attacking either of these pitchers, but I certainly like attacking this weather with hitters. Just got to get it up in the air. You got a chance to go yard. So I think it's a pretty interesting game to kick it off. We'll go over to you, Mangone, for Yankees and Braves. What do you got for us?
Yeah, Yankees and Braves is definitely an interesting game. I mean, I think you can make the arguments for the pitchers and the hitters. I mean, you and I have definitely been, we've talked a lot about ownership on pitchers. I think that's been a big conversation that when you and I are on shows, we discuss. And I'm assuming both of these pitchers don't really have much ownership. I mean, I guess Cortez is coming in at, Saber has him 4th highest. That surprises me because I didn't see that coming. I did play him the last start against Baltimore, and I thought it was kind of uncomfortable, but I kind of just trusted Saber and went with it, and that worked out. Max Fried will be low, though, right? I think one reason why I think Max Fried will be low is because he's 9,500. 9,500, and the other pitchers that are around him, pulling up the price tags, you got Lodolo at 9.2 above. Skeens, 10K. Max Fried naturally will be squeezed at that price point. Cortez's ownership makes more sense because he's 7,800, right? 7,800 kind of feels too cheap for Cortez. I know the matchup is the Braves, and you can make arguments that the Braves are good or, really bad, depending on how you value them or if you think they're really good or not. But Cortez at 7,800, the upside is there. So I kind of understand it. I guess the question will be, what do we think of the ownership on it? And then the other problem with Fried is I like the idea of playing Fried at low ownership, but my issue is I'd probably rather get to Lodolo and Skeens, which is what the entire field is saying. And I know I haven't said a lot there yet, TC, but what I'm getting at is Cortez is very cheap. I think you have to consider him in this type of spot. I know the weather is not great, but I think you have to consider it. Ownership will be important. That'll be something that I'm monitoring over the next couple hours leading up to lock, just because I think the Cortez ownership is so important because of the price point. And then Fried, I think he's in play no matter what. He's not this guy you're going to get 50% of, but just you and I have talked about it. Any pitcher at 5% or less just has to basically be a talking point, and especially when their name is Max Fried. So I do think Max Fried is in the combo, and I think both these bats are. The thing that I want to navigate as we go throughout the show is I was telling you at the start of the show that a lot of people are going to play certain offenses. There's like a couple that are going to stick out. And then the team totals are all really condensed. You're going to see a lot of teams around that 4.5 team total, as our guy Stats has in the Discord, and it's on the site. And I want to navigate and figure out which offenses could be those contrarian ones that people overlook. Could the Braves or Yankees be those? I think there's a chance they are, because I think they're very expensive bats, and I think a lot of people want to spend up at pitching today. So I think there's a chance they are, but I don't think they're a priority for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think either Fried or Cortez are necessarily bad plays at their ownership, but to me, a 20% owned Cortez on this slate, in this weather and hitting environment in New York, is probably something I'll pass on. He's been
DC. That's concerning, right? If it gets to 10%, does your opinion change, or you want it even lower?
Yeah, I mean, it surprises me that they've got him projected. So I probably won't play him. I'm playing my normal 5 lineups. If I was 115 today, both these pitchers I think would be in the pool. But there's just a lot of really interesting arms on this slate, both at the high price tag, Skeens, Lodolo, we'll talk about them, and some cheaper guys who I think are in pretty good spots as well. So for me, at least, Fried, Cortez, probably not going to make the cut on any of my lineups. Again, don't think they're bad plays. Fried would be the one I would be more likely to play, I think, given the lower ownership. But you really want to go up against Soto and Judge? I mean, in Yankee Stadium for 9,500 on an awesome slate, I don't know. I'm probably going to go elsewhere. In terms of bats in this game, to me, the Braves' power is the bats I'd be most likely to play. Albies, Ozuna, Riley, Sean Murphy, all those guys, in general, they've obviously been a little bit slow this year, but in general do swing it pretty well against left-handed pitching. Sean Murphy down there at 3,300 makes a ton of sense at a tough catcher position today. So I like the Braves bat some. And then the problem with going up against Fried, just doesn't give up any power. 077 ISO against right-handed hitters dating back the last couple of years. Just not a spot I want to attack in Max Fried. So Braves bats are actually the plays that I'm most interested in this game. Obviously, tough bullpen from the Yankees coming in after Cortez. So it's not a perfect spot, but I do think the Braves with the platoon advantage, and then that power plays so well in the stadium today, given the weather, that I will be chasing some home runs for sure from the Braves lineup. Albies, Ozuna, Murphy, I think would be my top 3.
I think based on the situation, DC, I think Yankees and Braves are probably better as minis. But if you're just a believer in attacking weather type games, like, you could do it, but it's going to be very low owned. People just aren't going to get to this game as much.
Yeah, seeing between 5 and 10% for the Braves stack, which makes sense to me, and I'm fine with those ownerships. Obviously, they're pretty expensive, so you got to do it mostly with cheap pitching. But there is certainly cheap pitching that I think is viable on this slate today. Let's get to Tampa Bay and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Could rain some in this game. I've seen some concern. I think it should play fine. Should be light rain that they play through. Obviously, if you're paying the 10K, finally made it to 10K, Paul Skeens, you got to be concerned a little bit about the weather. So we'll have to make that call closer to lock, of course. But assuming it plays fine, and I think it will, Skeens, has to be in play. It's really not a scary lineup to go up against in this Tampa Bay Rays. There's a lot of strikeouts to be had, and Skeens is showing zero signs of slowing down. He, gets the job done really every time out. So I see no reason to go away from Paul Skeens here. He will be popular. We mention it all the time on this show. Everybody loves Paul Skeens for good reason, for sure. But I do expect him to be the highest owned pitcher on this slate. I think that is fair, frankly. And I will have some Paul Skeens myself for sure. No real interest in Aaron Savale. I just think there are better, cheaper pitchers if that's the route you're trying to build. And then minor interest in some of these Pittsburgh Pirates bats. It would be mostly the top 3. Brian Hayes, Reynolds, O'Neill, Cruz, I think are all decent plays at their price points at the top of that Pittsburgh lineup. But For the most part in this game, Mangone, it's kind of Skeens or bust. It's obviously a big choice what to do with him. I think he'll be in single entry. I don't know, 50% owned. It wouldn't shock me to see him get right around there, which makes sense given how good he's been and how good we expect him to continue to be. So probably be somewhere near the field on Paul Skeens. I'm guessing I'll play him in either 2 or 3 of my 5 lineups. So yeah, depending on where his ownership comes in, I'll probably be pretty close to matching it, which I think is a fine approach on this slate. What are you doing here, man, going with Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay?
Yeah, a lot of slates, we talk about sometimes it's hard to get, like, it might be hard to get a pitcher in because you want a certain offense. Keep in mind on Sundays, we always have a lot of value, right? Just because there's guys that sit, this Braves lineup, I'm not saying we're playing them today, but they might miss an Ozuna and just have another value in there, right? And that just helps make your stacks cheaper and work. So Paul Skeens will definitely be, I think Paul Skeens is a priority today. I know you and I have definitely been wanting to spend down a little bit more at our pitchers. But I do think this slate is a little bit different. I think we are forced to kind of spend for at least one. Not saying we'll spend for both, but I do think we have to kind of spend for one. And Skeens is the priority to spend for if you had to pick one only. If I was only playing one lineup, there's a good chance I'd probably play Paul Skeens. I think Lodolo is a little bit of a pivot off of Skeens if you want it. It just kind of depends on the full construction of your team. But Skeens is a great play. Don't really need to say much else to convince anyone to play him. The Rays aren't that great. Definitely a team that we would like to target. Only thing I would do on the Pirates is like probably minis with like O'Neal Cruz, like Rowdy Tellez, Jack Suwinski, just kind of looking at those lefties against Savale. But other than that, the Pirates are not a priority. They're not going to be a team that when I build my lineups, I'm like, I don't have enough Pirates. Let me get them in there. Like, I just don't see this being a really sexy game. It's just Paul Skeens or bust for this one.
Yep, I think that, like you mentioned, the Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz mini stack, the 2-3 hitters there, I think is a decent way to play it, but not going crazy with the Pirates. And Skeens, if he fits your build, right? If you can fit him in there, and you're good with the ownership, I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't have a big game here. I do think he is. I think he has. Well, we'll talk about Nick Lodolo, who I think matches Skeens in upside, but not in safety. So we'll get to talk about that next because it is the next game on the slate. Cincinnati Reds and the Boston Red Sox. This one in Cincinnati, going to be another good hitting environment here. 85 degrees, humid, winds out to left field. Ball should be flying. We've got essentially a bullpen game for the Boston Red Sox, which, the Reds have let me down some recently, but, in theory, a really good spot for the Reds here. Obviously, a great place to hit. We know the Reds like to run as well, so they do have a lot of upside on any given slate, and they certainly do here. Boston going to go with Zach Kelly to start, but I think it's going to be a bunch of guys that pitch in this game for Boston. And then Nick Lodolo, one of my favorite young arms for sure, and a guy who can rack up strikeouts in a hurry when he's on his game, has looked good recently, and there are a lot of strikeouts to be had against this Boston lineup. Now, there are some dangerous bats in there for sure. Ref Snyder, O'Neill, Devers, all guys who could – actually, I think they're just fine to play those guys, especially the right-handed power. But I do think Lodolo's got a pretty good chance to match or exceed even Paul Skeens' strikeout total. Wouldn't be surprised to see Lodolo get to double digits, frankly, here. Does look like he'll be the second highest owned pitcher on the slate. SaberSim has Skeens and Lodolo as clearly the two highest owned. Lodolo around 30%, Skeens around 45%. Sounds about right to me. I like Lodolo here. Obviously, the ownership discount is nice, and you get the $800 discount from Skeens as well. And I have no problem on this slate paying for both these guys either. I do think that's a viable build to go to today, just with the upside that both of them can bring. Because, part of my problem, man, going to paying for pitching sometimes, for lower upside guys, right? But Lodolo and Skeens, they both do have kind of like slate breaking pitching ability. Not that many pitchers in the league you can say that about. So I'm in on Lodolo as well. We'll certainly have exposure there. And then right now, I think the Reds are my favorite stack on this slate. I think obviously any team could go down or bust, but in my eyes at least, they have the most upside of any team. What are you doing here, man? Going important game, Boston and Cincinnati.
Yeah, and when I think of that upside that we talk about with the pitchers, I try to think of the matchup. And like Skeens against Tampa, is it there? Yeah. If Skeens was against the Houston Astros, would you be more concerned? Of course. And then I would want an ownership discount or something like that. Lodolo is in a spot where we talk about this Red Sox team. Do we like the Red Sox against righties? No, but against lefties, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pretty good spot to target. I know this lineup has evolved a little bit throughout the year. I guess, DC, let me ask you this. Has it gotten better against lefties since like April and May? That's probably something we should start to really look a little bit at, just because I know the lineup's evolved a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lineup that can do damage. That's why I think Lodolo is not quite as safe as Skeens. There's just more danger for him, especially in this park, than there is for Skeens. But like I said, the strikeout rates of these Red Sox hitters are pretty high, right? So like you talk about, I don't know, a Tyler O'Neill, who is kind of a scary matchup for Lodolo, but could also very easily end in a strikeout, right? He does have a lot of swing and miss in this game. So Red Sox are kind of a little bit of a mixed bag in that way. But yeah, I mean, I do think Lodolo's got a very good chance to mow down this team.
Yeah, I mean, his ceiling's really nice here. So, like, I don't want to ignore that. And I guess the way you could think of Tyler O'Neill, which, don't get me wrong, when I see Tyler O'Neill in the lineup, I'm scared to death. I was scared to death when I saw Kikuchi against him. And when Kikuchi, I think he had 2 home runs hit on him from Tyler O'Neill. The second time, I was like, please do not throw it at him. Just pitch around it. Like, you don't need to. But the Tyler O'Neill thing kind of reminds me of Aaron Judge when he was young, when it was like, you saw that Yankees lineup. And that Yankees lineup isn't like this now, but this Red Sox lineup feels like a team that, yes, they can beat you really like with their bats, but when they're not on, the upside is there. We always talk about like trying to capture the ceilings, right? We're not playing for median outcomes. So Lodolo has that there. The question is, what's the ownership got to be for Lodolo versus Skeens? So I think if like you told me Lodolo was like 30% and Skeens was like 45, I'd rather have Skeens. If it's at like half of it, I think I'd rather take the chance at Lodolo. Like if Lodolo's 25 and Skeens is 50, I think you take the chance on Lodolo. So that's kind of how I would break it down. I doubt I'm playing both together unless I find like a really cheap offense. And I think a lot of people are chasing some cheap offenses that aren't great today that we'll get to and discuss. But overall, Lodolo's a good play. I doubt I get on the Red Sox. Like you said, if you wanted to play like a Tyler O'Neill one-off, perfectly fine. I wouldn't complain about that. I do think the Reds are going to be a popular team today against this Red Sox team. I definitely don't mind the Reds. I think if I play one of the chalkier offenses on the slate, I'm okay with playing them. I think there's a couple more that are going to gain some ownership that I just don't like as much, that I'm going to probably fade. We'll have to see. Maybe you'll tell me that I'm not thinking they're chalky, but overall, I do think this Reds team is kind of good chalk to eat here at this spot. So that's how I look at it. And also, another thing to think about too on these kind of slates when you're using projection sites, like if you want Elly De La Cruz, when you look at your Red Sox, make sure to get him in there. Like make sure he's on your Reds teams. Let's say you play 20 lineups in the $4 and you go to your Reds teams and Ellie's not on either team. Well, there might be a reason why, because of salary stuff. And that's a way that your team could instantly become unique, is that your Red stack has Elly De La Cruz and it has Paul Skeens. There might not be a lot of teams that have that same exact combination. So that's something that I'll manually look at. And the Reds have enough value in their lineup that it might work. If you look, Stu Fairchild's 3-1, Espinal 2-6, Benson 3-3, India's 3-5, Stevenson 3-6. That's the full bottom of the order. And then the rest of them are all in that 4K range. So overall, that's that Reds lineup. And don't fade Candelario. That dude has just been on fire all
year. Yeah. If I'm stacking the Reds, I'm making sure to get Elly De La Cruz in there. One nice thing about the Reds is when they do have good games, it usually comes with a lot of fantasy production. Given one, this is the best home run park on the slate, and two, they love to steal bases, so they add up in a hurry. Obviously, you just can't say that for every team, right? They're kind of like the plotting teams that stack up base hits or whatever. The Reds certainly, when they have a good game, it does come with a ton of fantasy production. That's why I said in my eyes at least, they are the highest upside offense on the slate.
Yeah. DC, are you scared of this, the bullpen game?
No, I mean, it's not a great bullpen from Boston anyway. Looks like they're gonna roll out Zach Kelly, who's not any good, and then Chase Anderson, who's really bad, is the long reliever today. He hasn't pitched since June 14th, so I do think they're hoping to get probably 3 or 4 innings out of Chase Anderson, which is frankly a really good matchup for the Reds. So no, I'm not worried about the bullpen game. It's not something we always like to target, but in this situation, especially on a slate where there's mostly pretty good pitchers going, I'll take my chances for sure with 9 innings against that Red Sox pen. So I think it is something we do want to target on this particular slate against this particular bullpen. Let's get to Toronto Blue Jays and Cleveland Guardians up next. Another game with potential weather issues. Again, I do think these games are going to be okay, but do need to monitor it as we get closer to lock. We'll, of course, be talking about all that stuff in the Discord all the way up until lock. We've got Tristan McKenzie here, who I continue to pick on pretty much every time he pitches. Of course, in this last game against Seattle, I think he was off of the slate, so I didn't get a chance to stack against him, and he had a very rough one. 4 walks, no strikeouts, 4 earned runs, only made it 2 1/3 innings. Was very heavy on the Reds against him 2 starts ago. He pitched okay there, of course, but I just do not believe in McKenzie whatsoever right now. The problem, though, with Toronto is one, against McKenzie, you want left-handed speed is the best plays, and Toronto doesn't really have much of it, frankly. I don't think we have their lineup yet that I have seen, at least. I'm hoping, Addison Barger's in there. Dalton Varsho, I think, is a decent play, but they just don't have that high of upside plays to go against McKenzie. And then you got one of the best bullpens in baseball that comes in after him. So it's not a perfect spot for the Blue Jays, but I still will have exposure here just because of my conviction that McKenzie just doesn't have it right now. And I do think the Blue Jays are going to put up some runs on him early on in this game. Kikuchi going for the Toronto Blue Jays has obviously been pretty good this year. Did give up 4 home runs in his last outing. So I don't hate some of this right-handed power for Cleveland. Jose Ramirez, David Fry would be my 2 favorites. And then I think Kikuchi is an okay play at 8,100. I'll probably go elsewhere, but wouldn't talk anybody off of him necessarily. Mangone, what are you doing with Toronto and Cleveland?
Yeah, I think the Jays are getting ownership. Do you agree on that?
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I think they'll get some. They don't have the highest team total though, so that obviously dictates a lot of it.
Agreed. So this is one of the teams I think is not a great play today. That I think they're over-owned compared to just there's so many teams on the slate that are within a very close team total. And I think they're bad plays. I just think this Jays team is not a good spot. The only play I'm kind of intrigued by is like a Spencer Horwitz because second base usually sucks. It's not one of the best positions. He is getting pricier. He used to be, 2.8 and 3.2. Now he's getting to 3.7. So it's getting pricier for him, but he's like the one guy I don't totally hate here. I do want to see what that lineup is. I'm hoping it's a bad lineup that baits people into a more. I'm hoping they even sit Vladdy and they still play Dan Vogelbach. I believe he's on that team. I remember.
I think they cut him finally.
They finally cut him. Okay, yeah. I was just kind of hoping, I hope you donkeys play Dan Vogelbach because I think it'd be a terrible play, and I think the projections would push him. I just think they would. But anyways, and by you donkeys, I don't mean the viewers. I mean the people in the field. Of course, you guys would not play Dan Vogelbach, but anyways, I think the Jays aren't good plays. Now, I should go to a counterpoint of what do we do with McKenzie if I don't think the Jays are good plays and there's leverage? He is a 1% play that no one's going to.
Don't play McKenzie.
I agree. I just want to clarify that these are conversations I think are good to have on the show. I don't see it with McKenzie here. I really don't. I don't think it's worth taking the shot on. I'm very worried about the upside. So I don't see myself doing it here with McKenzie. I don't think it's the right slate. He's 7.1K. It's not like I'm getting like, a 5K discount. There's like cores to spend up on. So not for me. So I'll pass on that. So yeah, I don't think I like that spot. And then the question is, what do we do with Kikuchi? Because Kikuchi is an interesting guy where we know what his downside can be. And last start, I know Steve and I were talking a little bit about it. He was like, man, Kikuchi is on right now. But he just can't find the control at times. Like the stuff looks good, but then the control just randomly will disappear. The Guardians are not a team that we like to attack, but I do think this team is a team I want to target over the next, month or two because of some of the ballpark adjustments you guys talked about on the shows and it being so hot in Cleveland. But I really like to do it when they have righties on the mound, right? Because I get to have Ramirez, Naylor, all these lefties that I like, Stephen Kwan. I prefer when I get those left-handed bats, not necessarily those righties against left-handed pitching. So I think I'm going to stay away from Cleveland today. But I want to be over the field on them over probably the next month or so because of some of the points you guys have been talking about.
Yeah, I do like David Fry quite a bit at obviously a tough catcher position. He's cooled off, but still think he's a reasonable play at 5K. I don't think he'll have any ownership, and we know Kikuchi can obviously give up the long ball. That's Cleveland and Toronto. We get to Chicago and Detroit next. Obviously, I've talked about a lot of good, expensive pitchers. In this game, we've got two cheap pitchers who I think are both in play, at least from where I'm sitting. We've got Reese Olson pitching for Detroit, coming off one of his best games of the year. Very, very strong outing against the Atlanta Braves. 6 scoreless innings, 8 strikeouts in that one. I think that might have been his best start of the year, or one of them anyway. But yeah, he looked awesome. And he gets the Chicago White Sox here. Obviously, one of the worst lineups in baseball. No Luis Robert in the lineup for the White Sox, so that's a nice bump for Reese Olson. And then Jonathan Cannon, who I know led to a lot of people having big days back against the Astros. We were in on the Cannon train once we saw no Jordan, no Kyle Tucker. He certainly delivered in that game, 27 DraftKings points. Only got the 4 strikeouts, but 11 through 106 pitches. Finished just 1 out shy of a complete game shutout. And I say this all the time. I mean, of course, when you're, pitch a complete game shutout or close to it, you're going to look good, right? When things are going well. But I thought he looked legitimately nasty. He's got a sweeper that has a lot of movement. I do think he's going to be a pitcher that's ultimately way better against right-handed hitting than he is against left-handers. And there are, I believe, 5 lefties in the Tigers lineup. But, outside of Riley Green, they're not by any means the scariest bat. So I think a fine matchup for Cannon here. A little surprised, to be honest, to see the Tigers with a team total of 5. I know the White Sox bullpen is horrible, and it is really good hitting weather in Detroit, but still, that number surprises me a little bit. So I like Cannon here. It looks like he's not going to have much ownership. I mean, Sabres got him at 1%. We know he's going to be higher than that, but if it's anywhere close to that number, I think he's a pretty strong play at 6,200. And I like Reese Olson too here. So he's going to be definitely higher owned. Sabres got him around 20%. But I'm probably rolling the dice here on $6,200 Jonathan Cannon. I like what I saw last start, and I think the matchup's fine too. So I don't really get the super low ownership with Cannon. I think I'm on board. What are you doing here, man? Going with White Sox in Detroit.
Yeah, this is another spot, DC. I think the Tigers are probably the worst play on the slate because when you calculate ownership, you look at the team total versus some of the others, I just think this Tigers team is a bad play. I love slates when I feel like the field is playing too much of one offense. And listen, if the Tigers go for 10 runs, I'm going to lose money today. It's just very simple. I'm okay with it. It's fine. I like this spot for Cannon a little bit too. I think the leverage is too good to pass up on. Also, we are struggling for some value pitchers. I know you and I have talked about diving into some of these dumpster fire pitchers down here. And a good point that you mentioned on a recent show, or it was either there or at the baseball game. I can't remember which one when we were talking, but Jonathan Cannon, we really don't know who he is, right? It's like those A's pitchers we talked about. They're young pitchers that we don't know that much about. This isn't, John Lester trotting out there, or Patrick Corbin. Like, this dude could be a stud. I mean, this dude could cost $9K next year. I don't know. So I want to play Cannon. I think he's worth taking a shot on, especially teams like the White Sox, who we know why they're a garbage team and why they have been for a while. They've traded away a lot of their players, and they've gotten these younger players and are trying to build up their farm system. I don't know who he is, but I'm not scared of this Tigers team. And at their ownership, it's just too high. So I'm not interested in that. Reese Olson is an interesting one because, yes, Reese Olson, I think he's one of those guys that's a very wide range of outcomes pitcher. Do we think we could take a chance on the White Sox here at some lower ownership? Yes, they are missing Luis Robert, but they have Eloy Jimenez back. I mean, the lineup's Pham, Benintendi, Jimenez, Sheets, Vaughn, DeJong. It's not the worst lineup in the world. I'll consider them from a value perspective just because I think people are going to play Olson as a value pitcher today. And I just think the White Sox are intriguing. I even don't think they're that bad for 5-man stats.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I think the White Sox is kind of a sneaky spot to take some shots.
Yeah, they almost had their best lineup of the season out today. If Robert would have been in there, unfortunately he's not. But yeah, I don't hate it against Reese Olson. We know Olson's going to be somewhat popular, so you get the leverage. Bad bullpen behind Reese Olson for the Tigers. And like you said, at least these are like major league hitters in the lineup now for Chicago, for the most part, right? Pham, Eloy, Sheets, Andrew Vaughn. They're not the greatest hitters, or it's not obviously a great lineup, but, at least some power in there. And, listen, would be shocked if Reese Olson chalk didn't get home? Of course not. So I do think the White Sox, as a leverage play, do make some sense. I don't know for sure if I'll get there on my own 5 teams, but yeah, they're absolutely in play. I assume they'll have next to no ownership, and we know Reese Olson will gain some ownership himself. So yeah, kind of like that call. And with Cannon, I'm just gonna go with it, honestly. At that low price point for a pitcher that I think looked legitimately good, matchup is good.
What's the ownership? Yeah, have you looked? What's the exact ownership right now
on Cannon?
I see 1%. That sounds good.
Yeah, it won't be 1%, but it's going to be low. It's obviously not going to get too much.
It's not. I don't think it's going to be above 5, but maybe because if you do look at the cheap value pitchers today, like if you just kind of skim just really quickly, there's not a lot to love. I think there's 2 or 3 guys maybe that stick out. I think it's like Olson, Cortez, maybe Marsh, but I don't know. The Marsh thing probably not after what happened last start. So for me, it's only I think people are looking at Cortez and Olson. So maybe Cannon gets steamed up a little bit, but he's not going to be above 10%. There's just no chance.
Yeah, we're both in on the Jonathan Cannon train. It does feel a little scary going back. It's like he delivered so strongly, on our big take last time out, that it does feel like you could give some back here, but yeah.
But I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking for like a 26 piece.
Yeah.
I'll be fine with 15 or 14. We'll get away with it. I'm okay with that.
Yep, I'm with you. Let's get to Seattle and the Miami and Marlins up next. Bryce Miller pitching for Seattle. I know it sounds like a broken record sometimes, but it has to be mentioned how much better he's been at home than he has been on the road. Same with pretty much all the other Mariners starters. He does get a good pitching environment here, though, in Miami, and a pretty weak lineup going against him. So I think Miller will get some ownership. I'm probably not going to play him. I just like other options better, but I think he's a reasonable play at 8,800. And then Miami going with something of a bullpen game as well, I believe. Kyle Tyler going to get the start. I'll look a little bit more into him here, but I don't think he's in play at 7,600, even against Seattle. And I don't love bats in this game either. I do think Jazz Chisholm, Josh Bell, maybe Jesus Sanchez are okay plays. The lefty power against Miller isn't bad, but certainly not guys that I'm, lining up to play. And I don't think I'm going to get too much Seattle in this park. What are you doing, man, going with Seattle and Miami?
Yeah, before I go into that, just to let you know, Daniel said the Blue Jays lineup is out. It's pretty normal. No Dan Vogelbach in there. I'm assuming he got cut. And then Oh, the Skeens pick. We talked about Skeens. He's the best play on the slate, and Mr. Lodolo is a good one too. Obviously, good spends, but we're trying to get a little creative. That's why we're talking about Mr. Cannon, and we didn't like the Tigers. But Skeens is a great play today for sure. But yeah, I don't like this game from a bats perspective. There's no bats that I'm interested in. It's just Seattle. I like them at times, but they always are like kind of somewhat gain ownership because of their prices. But I just don't want to play anyone in this park. We talked about it. Once it hits like June, July, I really just don't want to play guys in the Tampa park and the Miami park. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me unless the spot's like a dream spot, and I don't think it is. If that's the case, we got to at least talk about the pitchers to some degree. And I think Bryce Miller is in the conversation today. He has a lot of upside playing against Miami. I'm not going out here and saying I want to like just shove on Bryce Miller, and I think he's like an amazing play, but I just think at his price, he's a good play to take some shots on. So I'll take some chances on him, and then I won't take chances on this other pitcher that we know nothing about. Unless you, for some reason, tell me he's this like young stud that I should. But he's playing Seattle, but it doesn't seem like it's a great play.
No, yeah, I don't. I don't know too much about him, so don't want to speak too definitively about somebody. He hasn't been getting really any strikeouts. Yeah.
Is he stretched out enough too?
Yeah, he's thrown 45 innings in 10 games, so I think, yeah. I mean, if he was 4K or something, I would be willing to do it, but not at 7,600. I just, yeah, give me a Jonathan Cannon or.
I think if this was that slate that you and Boynton did on Tuesday, and it was like low ownership, I would consider it because it's Seattle, but I just think it's kind of the wrong slate for it. Like I don't want to say that we like should ignore when we got these like young guys out there, you know, especially against Seattle that we don't know that much about because we know it's an amazing strikeout matchup, but yeah. I just don't know if it's the right slate for it.
He did throw 94 pitches in his last outing back on the 16th at AAA. So yeah, he is fully stretched. 85, 83 pitches. So
I'm just gonna say this: if someone said to me that they were doing that, I wouldn't talk that like on like a couple teams. I wouldn't completely talk them out of it because again, it's Seattle. You're getting a value pitcher, and I know 7,600 is a little pricey, but you're getting this like pivot off of Cortez against the worst. Well, I don't know if they're the worst, but they're bottom 5 in strikeouts in a good pitcher's park.
Yeah,
it's just there's a lot of things that do line up. And I don't know much about him. I haven't looked at his metrics, but just talking from that perspective, like I just think whenever a team is against Seattle, you have to get like the pitcher could be JT Hayes, right? And I'm going to consider JT Hayes. I just am. So.
Yeah. Again, if he was cheaper than 7,600, I think I would have some interest, but probably not going to get there. Don't think he's the craziest play though. At next to no ownership as well. Kyle Tyler is who we're talking about there.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to play Cortez at ownership. You know what I mean? Like if I told you only had one lineup, DC, and you had to play Cortez at ownership or him, who would you play?
I'm not playing Cortez. I'm honestly probably more likely to play Kyle Tyler than Cortez.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I'm funding you $15 for a tournament. Which would you do? I said you can either play Cortez or play Tyler. Here's my $15. Make your choice. You would probably play this other dude.
I'm not playing either, but so I'll stay Kyle Tyler with no repercussions to be had. But
well, then you don't get my $15. Then you're not joining the show.
I'll pocket your money and go buy a beer or something. Baltimore and Houston up next. Framber Valdez and Albert Suarez going here. This one in Houston, 8.5 total. Suarez has been pretty strong this year. He did have a rough outing last time out against the Yankees. You certainly understand that. 6,900 for Suarez. I don't think I'm doing it here against the Astros, who have pretty low strikeout rates until you get to the bottom, the last third of their lineup. And then Framber Valdez going for Houston, coming off kind of a couple disappointing outings, got knocked around in San Francisco, and then only 5 strikeouts, 5 walks against Chicago. Wasn't terrible, but you were looking for more there against the White Sox if you played Framber. He does have a nice price point here of 8,300, but on this slate, Mango, I'm not doing it against obviously one of the better offenses in baseball in Baltimore Orioles. to me, better spots to go to. A lot of them, frankly. We like a lot of these pitchers. So not in on Framber. I do think you could play some of the right-handed power against him if you wanted to. And I do think the Astros are okay plays. Obviously, Jordan Alvarez stands out as a strong play against Albert Suarez. He would be the guy I'd be most likely to use on the Astros by a decent margin. What about you, Mangone? What are you doing with Orioles and Astros here?
Yeah, one thing that's kind of nice about this Astros team is because they got so hurt, they have a lot of value throughout their lineup now. I know Loperfido's back at 2,800, so you can like him. Man, I think the Astros are not bad plays here. I don't think Baltimore is either. Like if I told you Baltimore, Atlanta, and the Yankees, these expensive offenses that are against, decent pitchers that are not like scrubs or anything like that, I would rank Baltimore number one of those three, and I think they deserve it. And I'm going to take chances on Baltimore a little bit. I think they are this expensive offense that you could go spend up for that will give you a little bit of a contrarian build from the field. Like you and I have talked about spending on bats. And when you spend up for, Gunnar Henderson, Santander, Mountcastle, all these studs, I mean, you just can't spend for Skeens and Lodolo and all these other options. So it just gives you a unique build from the field. And when those offenses pop and you need the Gunnar Henderson 2-home run game, well, good luck catching me. I'll have you figure it out from there. So I love the Baltimore Orioles today. Our guy Bill Miner likes the O's as well. And listen, I like Framber, like in general. I think he's a solid pitcher, but Framber's definitely one of those up and down pitchers where when he gets bad, it can get really bad with Framber Valdez. And the team to make that happen is the Baltimore Orioles. So I think they're a really great play.
Yeah, that top three, Westberg, Rushman, Mountcastle, all swing from the right side there against Framber makes some sense. Gunnar is hit lefties pretty well. Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. I think the Orioles as a contrarian stack, I assume they'll have very low ownership. People don't usually like to pick on Framber. Yeah, seen around 5% or less for pretty much the entire Orioles lineup. So I don't mind that call at all. I think they're a pretty decent contrarian way to go on this slate if that's the way you're trying to build. Let's get to San Francisco and the St. Louis Cardinals up next. This one in St. Louis. Two more good pitchers, obviously a theme of this slate. Sonny Gray, Logan Webb, two guys who I don't really take many hitters against these guys pretty much ever, and probably going to be the case here again, Mangone. So I'm not on the bats here. I think Nolan Gorman, Alec Burleson, Brendan Donovan, some of the lefty power for St. Louis is okay if you are dead set on getting hitters in this game, but I do think there are better spots. Not paying the $9K for Logan Webb myself. And Sonny Gray at 10.5, it's a good spot for him. It's not a very scary Giants lineup. There are strikeouts to be had. Most of their big bats do swing from the right side. So, yeah, I think Sonny Gray is a perfectly viable play at 10.5K. That said, I do rank both Skeens and Lodolo ahead of Sonny Gray, at least in terms of upside. So I probably won't end up with Sonny Gray, but again, I think he's a totally fine play at 20, 25% ownership. It's just the price is way up there, and he's usually not the biggest strikeout arm there is. So that's my take there. It's not a super strong one, but what are you doing, Mangone, with Giants and Cardinals here?
Yeah, I don't really want to play Sonny Gray here. I'd rather play Skeens and some other options. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to play Sonny Gray. If he gets like 30 plus, he beats me. I mean, he's been great this year. Giants are definitely a team that you're not scared of, but I don't know. I don't see myself getting to Gray too much. The only way I'd get there is, I don't know, maybe when I build out my White Sox stacks, I just have all this money in the world and I have like a Skeens Gray team that I didn't expect. Sure. But like, I'm not prioritizing it. If I happen to land on him, don't crucify me. But I don't think he is worth going up for. So yeah. Overall, though, this is not really a game I want to play much of. I don't love playing the Cardinals bats ever. It's also against Logan Webb. I don't really want to play Logan Webb either at 9K. I don't think Logan Webb's like the worst play on the slate, but I don't think he's a great one. So I think this is a full fade for me. It's a 7 total. It is 90 degrees. It's a crosswind, but do I really want to play a 7 total on these kind of slates, like in like June and July? Not really. So I'm definitely out on this game.
All right, that brings us to the last game on this slate. It is the Kansas City Royals and the Texas Rangers. This one in Texas. We get the return of one Max Scherzer. It's been out the whole year with, I think it was an elbow injury. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it was, but he'll start here. He's not quite the same pitcher he obviously once was in his prime, but still a pitcher can rack up strikeouts. And then we've got, he got up to 79 pitches in his last outing. So should be able to go fairly deep in this game. Alec Marsh, he of the failed chalk last time out against Oakland, 7,500. Texas has been bad. I still don't know if I'm playing Alec Marsh there at that price point. Over to you, Mangone. What are you doing with Kansas City and Texas here?
Yeah, I'm not dying to play Max Scherzer in his first start back. Older pitcher. I know the matchup's good against KC. We've talked about wanting to pick on them a little bit more. I don't know. I just don't think this is the spot to do it. I know Texas does have a pretty bad bullpen right now, so I don't know if they'd stretch him out and let him go a little further, but he's an asset that they're trying to get to the World Series again, right? I know they're not in position right now, and they're going to have to push their guys at some point, but it's still June. They still got tons of time. Max Scherzer, I probably won't play. I'll just let him go. Alec Marsh, you could make arguments for, I think. Let me check his ownership, just because I could see it being higher than I would like, because he's definitely like one of those guys I want his ownership to be low. It looks like it's low, though, right? Yeah, no one's really playing him right now. I do think some people are considering playing Texas. I want to see what that lineup's going to be. That lineup is getting stronger and healthier. So I think this is a spot where you could play both sides. You can make an argument for Texas, and I think you can make an argument for Alec Marsh. So, I mean, I know it's I haven't said that once on this slate, I don't think, but I think this is a spot where you can go either side and take a chance on it. I don't want to play KC, though, and I don't want to play Max Scherzer either.
Yeah, Alec Marsh has given up a ton of power. Seeing a bunch of people mentioned Wyatt Langford, top prospect, really struggled early on in the year, but he does appear to have found his game. And yeah, Marsh, 252 ISO, given up to right-handed hitters over the last couple of years. Kind of like this Texas team a little bit. It sucks going to a dome game when it's 95 degrees everywhere else, but I could see Texas doing some work here. Looks like they're getting some love from the chat. I totally get it. I think they are a viable stack against Alec Marsh, who obviously didn't look very good last time out. And I'm not paying the 8,500 for Scherzer. I'll wait to see what he looks like, and obviously maybe consider him going forward in his next starts. All right, Mangone, that's all 9 games. Let's get to stacks, pitching, home runs, all that good stuff. We'll start with you. Your favorite stack and your favorite contrarian stack.
Yeah, favorite stack, favorite contrarian. I think Baltimore's contrarian today, right? Would you agree?
Yep.
Okay, so they'll be my favorite contrarian stack. And then favorite stack, it's probably the Reds, right? We talked about that. I know there's some offenses, specifically Detroit and Toronto, I think are just bad plays that are going to get too much ownership. So I'll go with the Reds as my favorite stack. And I think they grade out well, but I think they're good chalk.
Reds are going to be my pick as well for my favorite stack on this slate. We'll have plenty of exposure there. Contrarian stack, I'm going to go with the Braves. Power against Nestor Cortez in Yankee Stadium. Something that I'm pretty interested in. And, the Braves never let us down, so I'm sure it'll work out just great. Let's go to you for your most important pitcher on this slate, Mangone.
Yeah, I think we will probably say the same answer, and it's probably going to be that Mr. Cannon. If I had to pick, I mean, I do think Skeens is probably the most important, but like he's chalk. But I think Cannon's going to be pretty important on this slate for me. So if I'm picking a value pitcher to take a shot on, it's going to be him.
With you, Cannon will be important for me as well, and I'll play Lodolo as kind of my expensive important pitcher. Home run call, Mangone. Who's going yard today?
Yeah, going yard. Let's go with Gunnar. Well, actually, I want to give a I'll give Gunnar Henderson as my favorite play of the day. We'll give Mr. Candelario as the home run. So home run call is Candelario. Favorite overall play is Gunnar Henderson.
I'm going with Mr. Sean Murphy. Has started hitting well for the Braves. Still very, very cheap for his talent level. Obviously had the 40 burger a couple days ago that helped K Fallon chip. So I'm in on the Sean Murphy train here today. Favorite overall hitter on the slate, man, going to finish us off here.
Yeah, like I said, Gunnar Henderson, he'll be the guy. He'll be my favorite overall hitter for sure. So we'll take some stabs at him.
I'll go with Addison Barger. Very cheap. Use him at third base or outfield. Lefties against McKenzie is something that I want to target. He's got a little bit of speed as well. And perhaps most importantly, super cheap at $2,400 allows you to fit in some of the bigger bats for pitchers if you want to go in that direction. That'll do it for the show. We appreciate all you guys watching. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet done so. And this show, of course, will be back tomorrow at the usual time. That'll do it for Mangone. I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.